my major is kinesiology, so I'm in the Health and Human Development college here, but my minor is in Spanish, so I do have interest in liberal arts as well. I do have a comment, question, and comment to the end, and a lot of the comments toward the end are going to be in regards to research, in regard to the question that Dr. Henderson posed earlier about increasing the African American population here at Penn State. So first and foremost, I did want to comment on the response you gave earlier about asking all of the faculty, and just from my personal opinion, I didn't think that if you were to ask a board of, let's say, sexist men about the sexism that exists in a department, it wouldn't be wise to ask if you already know or if there have been claims of sexism existing in that environment. So the same shouldn't be done if the same is saying about racism. Just like we talk about gender bias, the race bias, they're across the board, they're consistent. So first I wanted to bring up research by Professor Mary Beth Gassman from UPenn. You know that she's a professor of higher ed and graduate school education there. And she wrote an article, she actually wrote 2 articles about why there aren't more faculty of color at institutions like this, and her response was because we don't want them here, and that was very frank. And I'm going to just pick on a couple of points that she made. One of the first ones was quality. The question of quality comes up when people of color candidates are in the room, when white counterparts or not, or other white candidates are in the room, asking if they are qualified. Number 2, the search committee diversity. This was actually number 3 on her list, and talking about what does the search committee look like. So what did the search committee look like for the search for the dean of liberal arts? And I urge to use language broader than diversity, because a lot of times when diversity is used, the black narrative is swallowed. So a lot of times we talk about LGBTQA plus when we're talking about diversity, and we talk about women, and all that is great, but my concern comes into when does why is black a part of those intersections? So there's a black woman, if there's a black LGBTQA, if there can be white LGBTQA, there can be Asian, there can be Latino, Latinx, etc. But where does white, black become part of that narrative, especially here at Penn State, since there has been about less than 5% black students here at Penn State, and has been so for about 30 years, including 3% faculty here at Penn State. Another thing, the third thing that I wanted to bring out from the article was she talked a lot about there not being avenues, or there not being methods or pipelines for people of color in colleges, but in her research, and she also does policy as well. I hear you bringing up policy a lot. People of color, especially black people, are overwhelmingly represented, especially in liberal arts. So those arguments should not be true for College of Liberal Arts. They're overrepresented in humanities. This is not the College of Education, so I'm not going to get into that, but that's also true for College of Education as well. Also, you said that you're into American literature. I have a question. You don't have to answer it, but possibly for people here who also teach English, especially American literature. So what does your syllabus look like? Are you including people like Toni Morrison, who has received Nobel Prizes for being American literature, American novelist, and she got one of her degrees from Princeton, another from Cornell, another Ivy League, since you said you're from Yale as well. And yes, I want to urge again to refrain from using diversity. You use diversity, I'm sorry, there's a legal tie to it, but I'm saying when diversity is asked, or when someone is asking about black in particular, African American, to use that, because diversity can swallow that narrative. For example, diversity says that there has been an increase in diversity at Penn State. Latinos, Latinx, and Asian has been increasing, while blacks have been decreasing, and especially that's pertinent to the College of Liberal Arts. And I was going to get into the Moral Act of 1862 and the implicit institutional racism that was brought into that in particular, but I'll just leave that. But I think my point is pretty clear, and my question then is, what are your ways to make sure that we're increasing black, right? So because there have been initiatives to increase people of color, Latino, Asian, what is the black? And also another thing that I've observed, especially through research and those kind of things, if I'm urged to go to a professor and I want to ask questions about his field or his interests, etc., I'm supposed to be taking notes. So my question to you is, are you taking notes? Are you going to remember all of what I'm saying? Is it going to be taken seriously after I sit down? Are you going to remember that I asked about Toni Morrison? Are you going to remember that I asked about Mary Beth Gassman? That is my concern, especially I'm leaving in December, but my concern is for people here And also I would ask when I'm done, please not to reduce anything that I said to passion. It's much more than passion. It's serious. I will graduate in December with a degree. So it's not just passion, and I would just ask that you take it seriously because I am a student, like you said, at the land-grant university, which is great. It's not Yale, but once again, I should be taken seriously, and I please ask again that you don't reduce it to passion, but to actual facts that I pulled from research. Thank you.
Yes, I teach Toni Morrison, and Elizabeth Keckley. I've written it's in chapters in some of my work, who was a woman of African-American woman in the 1860s. So yes to that. Yes, I will remember as much as I possibly can of what you said. I am in a particular rhetorical occasion that's a little bit different from taking notes, so, but I did hear that. And I do want to say that to me, talking about passion, I will tell you why, from my identity, I come from that, is that I have seen a lot of good conversations get shut down when when the emotion that's in a room that's really important is also erased. And I do not mean to trivialize it. I actually mean that emotion is worth analyzing. Your question is multifaceted, and we have 9 minutes and 2 people standing. So I will say that the things that I have thought about and seen work and with different kinds of success for increasing the number of African American undergraduates, graduate students, faculty, staff are number one, to think very early on about pipeline programs. I think there's some summer programs here for students, but there's a program that we're very proud of at Ohio State that has had a little bit of legal questioning, which is an aside, but it's called Young Scholars, and it starts making a connection with 7th graders in several different parts of the state and brings them to campus and really works with that group. The same thing could be done with something you do have called SROP, which is kind of bringing in, and there are some good programs that come in kind of starting early to cultivate the idea that this is something that takes consistent time for a long time. And then on the sort of graduate students, the same thing. There are bridge programs from master's to PhD for faculty who might not, for students who want to look at that and get extra monetary support, but there's also some foundation support for that. And for faculty, I think part of it is looking at what the fields are and sort of thinking creatively about cohorts. I was told that at breakfast this morning by the current dean that there have been some cohort ideas, and that's something that it's just a thing that's there, and that is out there in higher education. The last thing I want to say of all of the notes that you shared is that you mentioned the problem of kind of getting the answer you want by asking the wrong questions or by having the wrong people who are not aware of their implicit biases. I'll use that term. You didn't, but I think that's what you were talking about, and I acknowledge that.
She's talking about racism.
Okay, racism and also implicit bias, which is an actual sort of understandable neurological thing that the social psychologists can talk about as well, which can lead to racism. And racism is a real thing, absolutely. But that implicit bias, I think it has been very heartening to me where I work, that having not done this for many years, we made a requirement that search committees, before they start evaluating I think you used the word you're not qualified, or the quality, and your researcher who you were citing mentioned that we started really using rubrics that experts had, including experts who studied racism, have come up with that you can agree with as a search committee before you start reviewing, so that you're not saying, is she qualified and she's from Atlanta, Georgia, and we're in the Midwest, but you're not letting that enter in. You're looking at what you've agreed you're looking for, and you're making your first assessments. There are many studies, of course, I'm sure many of you in the room know, that if you take away the name and the institution, and I bring Yale up not because I necessarily honor Yale that much, it's just part of who I am, and I am who I'm at, and that's all I can be. that did influence my liberal arts perspective, and I think the land grant is going to turn it over. But nonetheless, that if you sort of take away those names, that can lead to different outcomes and can make you think about the quality. And I, in any employment decision I've made, and in a lot of work on hiring, have asked to see those rubrics, have asked for discussion about how they're being utilized, and we've done a lot of search committee training about that kind of question, which has made people think, at least, which is part of the awareness, and then trying to build trust in the process by having that, and also in some cases saying in the dean's office, we now have a hard stop in our college. When you look at the finalists for a position who might be coming to campus, if they are not, you look at the pool of applicants, and if they're not diverse and bringing diversity, and yes, I am using the diversity, and I know the reasons you don't like the word, but it's truthful what I'm saying right now. If you bring diversity in, that we would say you can't continue the search right now until you go look at that a little more, and can we figure out what's really going on with that pool. So those are some of my thoughts. And now we have 5 minutes and maybe 2 people. So
I'm Kathy Warner from History. I'll be very brief. In your